Hi, this is Tanya Becker, and I'm your host for today's episode of PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating. If you haven't already, please subscribe to PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Carl Blackwell, the former president of Discover Boating and a recent boating industry innovation judge, is here with me today. I've really been looking forward to this conversation because Carl has a tremendous amount of knowledge about the boating industry and some really interesting perspectives given his former position at Discover Boating. Being a leader in PartsVu's marketing department, I have the honor to talk to a lot of fascinating people and work pretty hard to keep track of what's going on out there. So today, Carl and I are going to talk about what's happening in the boating industry, and while 2023 is still young, some of the trends that we're going to be following this year. Thanks so much for being here today, Carl.
Man, I couldn't be happier to be here. This is one of my favorite topics.
No, we're going to have a ton of fun. So I thought we'd start with some general thoughts about the overall interest in boating, what's happening out there, and then some advancements in marine technology and how they're really changing the boating experience. And then also the growth of boat clubs, and then close with some interesting products that really caught our attention. Does that sound good to you?
I'd love to talk about that stuff.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in. I think as most everyone knows, the interest in boating and in boat ownership really skyrocketed in the pandemic. And, everyone was desperate to find outdoor activities and entertainment, and boating certainly fits that bill. But I wanted to get your take on whether or not you think the interest will be long-term or just kind of fade over time.
I think it will be long-term. I mean, if you think about it, being on a boat is a great way to connect with people, and people are so disconnected by being on their phones all the time. And but I also think that the interest in being outdoors has always been there. And when you can get somebody out on a boat, when you can get your kids out on a boat, they start to see this wonderful nature out there, and they can get off their phones for a little bit. But at worst, you're only 10, 20 feet away from your family, and so you're going to be connected whether you like it or not. But my experience has really been that people are they start to bond and connect when you're on the water. I tell a story about taking a bunch of writers out on the water, writers, like authors, not writers. And, when they step off the dock and onto the deck of the boat, the magic begins. And, and as I take them out on the water and we're pulling away from the harbor, I tell them to now think about, how are you feeling right now? Because I know at the dock, they're all tense and tight, and they're but when you get them on the water and you start to pull away, your stress just dissipates. So anyway, I think people are looking for that today, and a lot of people were introduced to that during the pandemic, and so I don't see that going away.
I tend to agree with you. And one of the really interesting things that happened was the growth. We follow, PartsVu follows and are involved with, to an extent, youth bass fishing, tournament fishing. And, high school, even like junior high, middle school, and certainly college, tournament fishing was on the rise before the pandemic, but it just skyrocketed. The kids obviously were one of the few things that maybe they could do, social distance and all. And it's just, it's gone crazy. So, and with no sights of slowing down. So I think that's certainly a bellwether of sorts for the boating industry and just interest in fishing and so forth.
I think the industry's done a great job of promoting that to our youth. Mm-hmm. It's competitive. Again, you can connect with nature. They got catch and release, so mm-hmm. that relates to a lot of folks as well. And it's a great sport. I think the tournament guys have done a great job.
Yeah, I think so too. Put a lot of money and support behind it, which will bring up the next generation of anglers and boaters for all of us, which, is good for the industry, obviously. So, one of the interesting things to me too has been the growth of the very big and the very small. There's been a, very healthy growth in the yacht industry, and, sort of the, fancy boats out there. And also, in small boats, like, fishing kayaks and so forth. Are you seeing that as well?
Oh yeah. I think that, well, obviously, the higher end boats are not really necessarily impacted by recession, and those are going to continue to grow. But just the product innovation in the smaller boats, and I do see a lot of fishing kayaks out there, and you can fish from a personal watercraft these days as well. So both of those, just the sport of fishing is growing, and a lot of times people just go out by themselves or with a buddy, and you don't need a big boat, and you can actually go out on a kayak with another friend on another kayak, and you can get in tight and close and fish in places a normal boat wouldn't let you get into. So, one thing that I thought was really interesting is that 95% of all boats are smaller than 26 feet. So there's a lot of small boats out there. And also it's a great price point too. I mean, you can get a boat for really any price that you want, within reason. Obviously, you're not going to get one for free. But 70% of boaters have a household income of less than 100,000, and they can't go out and buy a really big boat, but they can go out and buy a used boat. They can go out and buy a small fishing boat. So there's a boat for every price point.
That's right. You can get boats free if you just tool around the rural Midwest. I don't know that you would want them, but they are possible to acquire.
Well, all right, you got a point there.
They may not float, but the details, I don't know. I do find the growth in kayak fishing to be really interesting. In Bassmaster, I believe it was 2 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, released a tournament trail, or launched a tournament trail for kayak fishing. So that's becoming, a very big thing. There's some other trails out there as well. So that's going to continue to grow. And I think it's, like you said, it's the accessibility of kayak fishing and to be able to, from an economic standpoint, as well as the accessibility to be able to explore different spots. But it's, it's just, I think, another challenge for folks, it's another game. That's just really interesting.
And, I know the federal government has invested a lot in the infrastructure, and, it doesn't take as much to create a kayak launch or a canoe launch. And so I know that there's been some funding set aside for more of those types of launches throughout the country. And, in Chicago here, you can launch a kayak. You see a lot of them on the Chicago River. And I don't know if they're fishing necessarily. I'm not sure I would fish there, but there's some great places to go kayaking in the city. Yeah,
there are. Yeah. And our listeners know I'm from Chicago too. So we have two Chicagoans on the episode. It's sort of an unusual thing. But there is not a chance in heck that I'm eating a fish out of the Chicago River. Just a side note.
Well, you can catch one, catch them. That's where catch and release is really important, I think.
That's right. That's right. You could find some mutant fish probably in the Chicago River, I suspect.
There you go.
So let's talk about how technology is changing the boating experience, which, technology has affected everything, and it's, profoundly impacting boating. What are you seeing out there?
Well, boats are getting smarter and smarter. Which is exciting. The automobile industry is a few years ahead of the boating industry, but boating's starting to catch up. I mean, it's amazing what you can do from your phone now. I mean, with this new smart boat technology, you can literally start your engine on a phone, and in some cases, you can turn on your air conditioning if you have a boat with an air conditioning, or turn on your refrigerator, or these are in the little bit larger boats. But you can also check your battery power. You can check your if you're connected to a shore power, you can check that. And if your bilge pump has been gone off, over a period of time, you happen to be in water, that's a problem. So you don't want to get down to the dock and find your boat submerged. But the technology that's available with smartphones, smart boat, is just incredible, and that's starting to grow. There's a few companies that are finally adding that to every line of every model of their brands. For instance, Ski Nautique and Centurion are putting that on all of their boats now. I know that Harris Pontoon has a few models now that have a smart boat technology, and I think Boston Whaler has one, Sea Ray has one. So I think you're going to see certainly the telematics part of smart boats become readily available in the next 2 years. So that's great. And then you see the auto docking. I mean, that's not. I don't even know if that's commercially viable yet, but I know Brunswick is working on that. Volvo's worked on that just to make boating easier. And I think that's where technology is, helping the boating industry, is just by making boating easier. And I've been in boating for many years, and fortunately, I know how to boat without all these little extras. I don't know what happens when that all breaks down. But still, I mean, I see a lot of boaters struggle. And I see a lot of boaters that just, don't want to go boating because they're afraid of docking, for instance. And having this technology that helps you, assist you, is just, it's exciting for me because people spend a lot of money on their boats. And I don't want to see them just sitting there and not using it as much. Of course, joystick docking came out. Joystick driving, I should say, came out, and then Skyhook. So if you've got a boat and you want to stay still, maybe you're fishing in your favorite fishing hole, you can literally just flip a switch and your boat will stay in one place. So a lot of technology out there, I think, is intended to make boating easier.
Can you explain to folks what telematics are? I think a lot of people may not know that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, telematics are all those measures. If you have a car, most cars have this device, and it's just a sort of the brains of the car. In this case, the brains of the boat, and it just connects different components to one particular device, which then allows you to just monitor. You can literally have a dashboard of your boat in the palm of your hands. You could be sitting 50 miles away from your boat and see what's going on. And they do other things like geofences. You can use them as alarm. A lot of people, especially when they have outboard engines, those are targets in some cases, especially in some parts of our country. And you could put geofences around your boat, and if your boat goes beyond, let's say, 25 feet of where it's supposed to be, or maybe it's even less than that, you're going to get alerted, which is great if you've got 3 or 4 outboards in the back of your boat. But also those geofences and it allow you to enable, maybe there's low spots out in the water that, especially at night, maybe you're not aware exactly where they are, but you can measure that, set a geofence around that. Say you're in a freshwater lake and you know where the stumps are, and you want to set a geocode or alarm geofence around those stumps so you don't go anywhere near them. That's great. If you want to monitor where your kids are, you tell the kids you can't go past a certain point. You can set a geofence, and whenever the kids go past that point, it's going to set an alarm on your phone, and you're going to be calling them up and telling them to turn around. Geofences, another beauty of having the telematics on your boat. It's really it's GPS enabled.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, you mentioned the boat theft and so forth. There's a couple of interesting alarm systems I know that have fairly recent. Angler Armor is one, and Siren being the second. I believe that Yamaha just bought Siren, if I understand correctly.
Correct.
So boat theft is on the rise, and not even just the boat. I mean, just the thieves will chop the outboards right off the back of the transom. I mean, it's kind of crazy, and not to mention gear and rods and reels and so forth that may be stored in the boat.
Yeah, and there's lots of sensors depending on the type of product you buy. I mean, you can literally, if the boat is being tampered with, in some cases they're so sensitive, if somebody steps on the boat, they will trigger that. It could be sitting on your trailer. It could be sitting, in a dock. And if somebody steps on it, it'll trigger an alarm. So, for those folks that are living in those areas that maybe theft's a problem, that's a great device to have.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to the autonomous docking kind of solutions. I mean, I think some of this sounds kind of funny to people that maybe boat more on a, not a lesser traveled lake or so forth, but, these marinas and waterways in Florida and Chicago and, I mean, they're no joke. I mean, people are running into each other fairly commonly, difficulty docking, et cetera. So I think these technologies will help quite a lot.
I think the hardest part of boating is close quarter handling. Whether it's actually backing your trailer down into the water, that's hard, and that keeps people from boating, which is a shame. And then when you're docking, it's easy to pull out of the dock. It's not so easy to pull back in, and especially if you're docked on a river or, I'm in Lake Michigan, and it is so windy always out there. And I pray for west winds when I come into dock. If I got east winds, I've got a challenge docking my boat. So having those technologies, whether it's joystick or auto docking, because those take into consideration wind conditions, and makes it a lot easier. But I don't have that technology on my boat yet, so I have to do it the old-fashioned way, which it's fine. But I just see people on the dock that are afraid to go out on their boat, and that's a crying shame. And so I just love the fact that these companies are being assertive and really going out there and finding ways to make boating easier.
Absolutely. And one of the things to make boating easier is to make maintenance easier. I know, Yamaha came out last year, I believe, or maybe it was 2020. Their My Yamaha Outboard app, which lets people track their maintenance, mileage, et cetera, and even allow the dealer to log what's been done to the outboard, as well as the owner can log any DIY service they do, which I think is really helpful to folks. I mean, remind them when the next service is due, et cetera. So, and certainly serve as a really nice log when you go to sell the engine or the boat.
Well, and keeping track. I mean, nobody's going to log the maintenance they get necessarily. There'll be a few people out there. I won't, unfortunately. But every year when it comes time to service my boat, I always have to think, now, did I get my batteries replaced last year, or was it 2 years ago? Was it 3 years ago? I'm like, well, I want to do it every 3 years in my case. And so having a log, I can look on my phone and see when I had it done, or, how many hours were on my engine when I had the last oil change, or, on my boat, I have to change my impeller, and I don't want to end up needing to change that, especially during the summer in Chicago, because you don't want to be locked out of your boat for a week. I mean, us folks in Chicago, we want to boat every weekend because we don't have that many weekends available to us.
That's right.
So we're pretty hardy here. But nobody wants to be out, and so having that log, that dealers do a great job of downloading that to your app, and that's another advantage of these the telematics is they do allow you to connect not only with your boat but connect with your dealer. And so if you have your favorite dealer and that they can tap into that system, they can log that for you, and it's just a great convenience.
No. Absolutely. It's fantastic. Another trend we're seeing out there is increased interest in boat clubs, like subscription model kind of boat clubs. How do these clubs work, and why do you think they're growing so much?
Well, I think they're great for the industry at large. And, for those people that want to get started in boating, and maybe those people that are going out of boating, but they're not ready to hang up the engine yet, but they want to keep, boating, those are great ways to do that. And clubs basically allow you to come in and there's probably a initiation fee, and then there's a monthly fee that enable you to take the boat out, X amount of times during during the month. You have to sign up for it. And, I believe Freedom now doesn't limit you the number of times you can go out. You just need to have to be able to sign up in advance. And, if the boats are already all signed up on a Saturday, well, then you can take it out on a different day. So, I just think that that's appealing to people that don't necessarily have the time or space to maintain a boat. Think about the urban setting where we live here in Chicago. I can't put my boat in my driveway. I live in a high rise, so it's not going to work for me. But I love boating, and so I could go down and join the Freedom Boat Club in my area or the Carefree Boat Club in my area, and I know they're just springing up everywhere, and a lot of it is because people don't have the space at home to store the boat. And, frankly, if you're just getting started in boating, instead of making that big investment, this allows you to kind of stick your toe in the water and, give it a shot and give it a try. And if it works out for you, great. If it doesn't, well, then you gave it a shot. But there's some downsides too. Some of the downsides is you can't always go out sporadically. You have to plan. So that can be a little bit of a downside. And a lot of the boats that are in boat clubs, not all of them are going to be your bigger horsepower boats. They're going to be a little bit smaller in general and maybe not as fast. That's probably for your own good, especially if you're new to boating. So then there's really nothing wrong with that. But what I like about it, a lot of times they have the most popular styles. You can get a pontoon boat. You want to bring out 12 of your best friends, pile them all on the pontoon. You want to go fishing on a center console, you could do that as well. So I just think that it goes back to makes boating easier. And I know that the two brands, probably the biggest brands, the Carefree and the Freedom, are really just growing so fast, and it's just exposing that many more people to boating, and I think it's growing boating because a lot of people are probably starting with that and saying, hey, I don't want to share my boat anymore. I want my own. Well, that's what I did.
Yeah. No, you bring up a good point for, people in larger urban areas like ourselves. It's very, very expensive to own a boat in Chicago, as you well know, being a boat owner in this city. And other thing for people that like to travel a lot, you can, I believe most of these clubs, I know Freedom does, and I think Carefree does too, give so many days that you can boat in your non-home location.
Right.
So if you wanted to use it when you travel, you can do that as well, even if you have a boat at home. So it's kind of nice.
That's a great point. Living in Chicago, I kind of like to get out of here in the winter a little bit. And I have a lot of friends that are snowbirds. I'm getting of that age where that happens. But they have Freedom Boat Club or Carefree Boat Club memberships down in Florida. So what a great way to keep boating year round. Yeah, I agree. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes. I can't believe you don't love our winters here. Come on.
It's not, I'm a boater. I can't boat in the winter.
Winters here are not for the faint of heart, generally. Although it's been very mild this year, so we can't complain too much, I guess.
You're right. I agree. But there's another kind of there's a different step. If you don't want to get into a boat club, they do have those boat sharing concepts that are out there. Oh. Get My Boat is one. Boat Setter is one, and. What I like about those for people is if they just want special occasion, they want to go out and I know it's really popular for bachelorette parties. I know in Lake Michigan, I can't believe the number of bachelorette parties every weekend that are out there. Yeah. And so I know that they're just basically renting a boat for the day. And that wouldn't allows fewer people to get on the water without that kind of, a business. And if you think about boat sharing, it's sort of like an Airbnb for investors. A lot of people go out and buy multiple boats, and they just put them in this Airbnb for boats, and they can make a living doing that. So it's really good for the boat owner, and then for those people that just want to go out on occasion. But that concept has been around for a long time. If you think about it, charters have been around. in the fishing world, charters is a big deal. Now, it's slightly different because you've got to have a charter captain, even though a lot of the boat sharing concepts, you have to have a charter captain as well. But I think charters, boat charters should be really popular. If they're not these days, because a lot of people like to fish. You were describing, how big kayak fishing is getting, but just being able to take a 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours and go out fishing, whether it's saltwater or a lake here in the Midwest. So that concept has been around for a long time, and it's just starting to become more and more prominent.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wanted to circle back around for a second on the topic of, technology in the industry, just to touch on the, some of the technology we're seeing in outboard engines. Outboard powered boats are becoming, more and more common. Even large boats that historically were not outboard powered. It's not only the move to outboard power, it's the move to these monster engines. It's just incredible. Like standing beside one of these things, it's a little awe-inspiring, really. I know that, in 2020, Mercury launched the industry's first ever V12 outboard, and they just came out, they're getting ready to ship now, I believe, in next month in February, their V10 outboards. And Yamaha certainly has, monster engines in their 450 horsepower as well. So it's crazy. And it's not only the crazy, these crazy just horsepower engines. People are hanging 5 and 6 of these things off the back of their boats. It's really incredible.
Well, you're starting to see a lot of growth in those boats that traditionally had the inboard outboard stern drive powered. And I have a stern drive. And I tell you, they take up a lot of space, and storage is such a premium on boats. And having that extra space, hanging that big engine off the back of a boat, to me, is very appealing. Especially since they're really starting to get smart in how they're designing the deck, so they work with the engine itself, so it doesn't become a big encumbrance. They're starting to have side entrances to these boats, or fold down sides, so you can jump off on the side of a boat in a little swim platform, and it's easier to maintain too. So I've seen some engine compartments where these stern drives or inboard engines are, and they're pretty tight. And so you put a couple of outboards, they're so much easier to maintain. You can pull it out of the water, which is a nice feature to have as well. So I know that even a couple of years ago they were already on 80% of boats, and I got to believe that number's just growing.
Yeah, no, I believe so too. Absolutely. So here's a fun topic: electric boats, electric motors. Where are we? That's like a headline on CNN. We're making progress, in terms of, electric power.
No, I think it's here to stay. I think it's growing, certainly. I was at the Chicago Boat Show recently, and I think you were there as well, and there were a few boats there. And I think what's interesting for me, being in the industry, it's when the production boat manufacturers start to build electric boats, then that it's going to become mainstream at some point. I know there's a lot of custom builders out there, and they've done a great job, and they probably have a head start. But recently I just saw Four Winds introduced a electric boat, and then Correct Craft, which owns Ski Nautique and Centurion and Bass Cat and Parker boats. Those guys have launched a Engine T. I want to say Ingenuity, but that's not it. Ingenuity brand. It's a 23-foot boat. It looks sort of like a pontoon boat, but it's fiberglass. And what I really like about it is a real nice deck. You can put a lot of folks on there, and you go at a decent speed, and it's got a decent range. And the folks at Craft are one of the more innovative companies in the industry, and so that's going to continue to get investment, get bigger. And then I know you were talking to me about some of the custom build companies that are building these boats.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. I mean, you kind of touched on this. I mean, obviously, electric boats really, like electric cars, have a ways to go. I mean, we're not there yet. So combustion powered, boats are not going anywhere in the near future. I mean, there's speed issues, there's range issues. I mean, but it's absolutely coming. And one of the interesting things is, if you think about it, solar powering boats, much of the time, not all the time, but much of the time when you're out on the boat, the sun is shining, so there's sort of a natural opportunity for repower. So that you may not have really necessarily as much in an automotive kind of context.
Very true. I mean, I think we're a ways from that, but I am quite confident there are probably devices on boats today that could be powered by solar power.
Absolutely.
I know at my dock, I have solar powered lights, so I light up my dock with. I don't have a battery in there, so which is nice. I have nice, well lit dock at night. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the good news is that the options are starting to become a little bit more mainstream. We're still 5 years, maybe 10 years away, but there's a lot of investment going in that, and I think people see the opportunity. And of course, you know that there's some electric engines now that are out there. Torqeedo's had one for a while, and I think there's a few other brands. Didn't Mercury just launch one, and Yamaha have one?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, Yamaha, I believe it was last year, that the Harmo electric outboard, and that I believe is a 10 horsepower. They're positioning it as primary propulsion or a kicker engine. But I think the Mercury engine is smaller. It's a 7 point. We were discussing as we were preparing for the 7.5E, but it's like what, a 3.5, 4 horsepower.
I believe it's 4 horsepower.
Is it? Okay.
So that's still going to push a smaller boat, obviously, but for fishing and again in those tight spaces, that's probably a great boat or great engine.
No,
sorry,
great engine. No, yeah. So when these guys are making, I mean, when the leaders in the space or in the engine space are making investments, it's going to happen. It's just when is the question, but we'll get there.
Mercury and Yamaha have such a dominant place in the industry. When these guys start to get serious about it, I mean, I'm sure they're serious about it now. I'm sure there's a lot of things on the drawing board there. But when you start to see these engines get launched, again, it's going to be mainstream.
Absolutely. So I thought we'd close by touching on just some of our favorite, or just maybe not favorite necessarily, but just interesting products that we run across recently. Do you want to start by sharing?
Yeah, sure. I was on the panel that judged the top 10 most innovative companies in the recreational boating industry, which was a great opportunity. And in my position in the past, I've had the opportunity to see a lot of innovation. Before it got launched, and a couple of the products that I think, the specific products that I found really intriguing was something that Seakeeper has put out called the Seakeeper Ride, and it's built for smaller boats, and it enables the boat to reduce 70% of the pitch and roll, so you're not getting those waves and rolls that you would get when you're out there, and especially for me on Lake Michigan, where there's the waves are, can be bad on a windy day, and so I really like that product. Plus, when you bring guests out on your boat, and on my boat, if we go out and we're already left the dock, I'm not turning around, and so some of these folks that get seasick. I really just try to help them out with, maybe some sort of antacid or something, because I'm not turning the boat around. And so if I can reduce the seasickness that goes in boats, that's making boating better, certainly for me and my guests. So Seakeeper's got that out. And what I really like about it is when they first came out, I believe the cost was around 25 to 30 grand. Not really affordable in a lot of boats, but now they've got this down to about 4,500. Wow. And it acts like a auto trim on your boat. So, I mean, a lot of people are challenged with trimming their boats out correctly anyway. By having this done automatically, I just think it's a real win for the customer.
Absolutely. And as one of those people, I love to boat. But I am one of those people that I know how to handle it. I know how to manage it to not get seasick, but I do have the propensity to get seasick without just mindful action. So I appreciate inventions or technology like Seakeeper. Thank you, Seakeeper.
A lot of people don't know they get seasick until they're out on a boat. They have no intention, or they don't realize that it's a 2 to 4 foot wave day on Lake Michigan. I keep talking about Lake Michigan because that's where a lot of my experience is. But, I've been on some smaller lakes that have some, a lot of, waves, or the wind just rocks the boat around. And, if we could keep people from getting sick on a boat, that's a great thing.
Yes, for everybody. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you found particularly interesting?
You were talking about engines. Suzuki has this engine. It's an attachment to their engine. It's called a microplastics filter. And so as water's getting sucked up into the engine and spit back out, they're actually screening for plastic, which I think is a great environmental cause. Obviously there's a lot of plastic, probably maybe it's a worse problem in the ocean than it is in freshwater. I'm not sure, but regardless, they're doing something about it. And, given the amount of plastic that's out there, if we can just start to filter out in creative ways like that. And the beauty of this engine is once it gets full, it's not going to shut your engine down. It does have a bypass, so it won't overheat your engine. But I know Suzuki it's standard on 115 and 140 horsepower engines. So great innovation by Suzuki.
That's interesting. Cool. Yeah, a couple things. I tend to be fascinated by the simple, like things that are simple but ingenious. And we've talked a lot about high technology things, but a couple things that are I found really interesting that are kind of low tech but really really fantastic. There's a product called the Leash, which isn't really, it's not new necessarily, but I've recently learned of it, and I think it's increasing in awareness and popularity. And it's a restraint engineered to reduce the risk of an outboard motor flipping into the cockpit. So it's basically a leash that attaches secures your outboard. I was not aware until recently that pretty much every engine manufacturer, the engine mount is designed to handle about 40 miles an hour. And, when tournament anglers or coming in for weigh-in, or, people skiing and so forth, I mean, you can be going much faster than that, and you hit something submerged under the water. It's killed people. I mean, the engine, flipping in with the propeller still running.
Well, so, and those bass boats are pretty fast. I mean, I've been probably the fastest I've ever been in my life on a boat was fishing in a Pro-Am tournament. And obviously I was the am part of that Pro-Am. But this guy went fast. I was looking for my seatbelt. And so, yeah, these guys are pretty serious. They like to get to the fishing hole fast, get to the bass fast, I guess. And so great invention. And, for the everyday boater as well as the professionals.
No, absolutely. Another thing I really like was D-Fender. It's another simple looking product, but it's the guy that engineered it is actually an engineer, and it's an arm basically that hooks. It's designed for bass boats, pontoons, And it only, they're marketing it to those types of boats because of the height of the boat to a typical dock. And it just keeps the boat, it's an arm that keeps the boat a safe distance away from the dock to prevent it from getting banged against the dock and damaged. So really effective, really great product.
I've seen that product as well. And, I just think about the pontoon guys that are out there tying up on the water, and what a great way to keep the boats from banging into each other. It's very clever invention. And the fact that you can also, when you pull into the dock, you can just flip it down, and there you go. You've got your instant fender. No,
absolutely. I was also intrigued by a startup company called Hydro Spider. And this is it's another one of those things. It's like, why has nobody thought of this before? But it's a rescue system, rescue device that's designed to be attached to a Type 4 Type 4 flotation device. And you can deploy it multiple times if somebody's in the water and you need to throw to them. Your rescue bags are designed to be deployed once. You've got one shot. And that's a lot of pressure to try to get, to try to get the thing to somebody. And throw discs are sort of the same thing. And it's, you have one shot, there's no flotation on it. So I really was really thrilled to learn about this as well.
I've had a personal experience with just throwing a throw bag. And I was in an area where the winds picked up and we were getting these little rip currents, and that's a fairly common occurrence in Lake Michigan. And I can only imagine how often, the currents on a river, if you're boating on a river, that person's going to move with the current. And, if it's windy, you throw that bag and you catch the wind wrong, you're in trouble. And, fortunately, I was able to reel it back in and throw it back out the second time, but I really would have preferred to be able to throw it and get it to that person the first time, because the person jumped in and got caught up in the rip current. I was ready to jump in myself with two life jackets, but fortunately didn't get to that. But I think that's a great device, and as soon as that's on the market, or I'll be on PartsVu.com to buy that myself, because I might even buy two. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yes, jumping in yourself when somebody's in trouble is really never the goal.
No. And that's why I said with two life jackets, one for me and then one for the other person. Don't go in with just one.
That's right.
Go in with two.
Absolutely.
And, it's just an instance where somebody was an inexperienced boater. And while I keep an eye on all my guests, I turned my head and this person jumped in, and I knew they were in a rip current, so I immediately grabbed I had it there on the back of the boat, and I threw it towards them. Wind caught it. I reeled it in real fast and threw it again, and fortunately they got it. But you just can't take safety serious enough. And I love the fact that there's innovation with something as simple as that.
Yeah, me too. It's so great. But this was such a fun conversation. I hope you had a good time as well.
Of course. Let's do this again. I love to talk about boating and innovation, and two of my favorite subjects.
Absolutely. And we'll come back and do this again next year and see what kind of progress we made with these areas. And I'm sure there'll be other new things that the industry is advancing. So that'll be fun to look at.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's the boating industry is reinventing itself. It's an exciting time to be in the industry, and I'm glad I'm there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating podcast. Are you in a dock war with your boating neighbor for the cleanest boat? Check out our marine soaps, polishes, waxes, and more at PartsVu.com. And for free shipping, use the coupon code PVTalksShine, a special perk for our podcast listeners. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for boating knowledge, to keep in touch with the PartsVu community, and for special sales and promotions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and check out the show notes for the coupon code just mentioned More information about PartsVu and the products we offer, as well as our boating blog, the PartsVu Exchange. And a big thanks to Mind for performing the original music featured within this podcast.